Dr. Patti, welcome to the podcast. So glad you're here.
Oh, thank you so much, Ashish. I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. I want to preface before we start our conversation today about how we've sort of interconnected each other, right? You guys, you and your husband, Alfonso, are participants in a couples mastermind with Mike and Kara Ayala. Mm-hmm. And we did that same couples mastermind last year, and you guys are doing it this year. And I somehow connected with Alfonso, and he's a designer, and we both connected and have got to know each other and become friends. And you're doing your own great work. And so it's just such a amazing opportunity, such a small world. And I'm really excited to talk to you today and to get a lot of content out of you for the listener and bring a ton of value, but just really great to meet you and have this conversation.
Yeah, great to meet you as well. And we are just beyond blessed to be part of that couples mastermind. And actually, the way that we found you, or my husband actually was introduced to you, was because Jordy, another gentleman in the mastermind, sent my husband a podcast that you had done. And that's hence the connection. So it's a small world, and I love when it gets smaller.
Absolutely. And that's what this is all about. This really is about expansion. And that whole journey of the couples mastermind put us on at least me and Sejal, on a whole nother level of, relationship building and connection and life expansion. And not only that, but just service and how we can share these messages with others. So I'm really excited for us to talk about this stuff. I guess let's start with you in your journey. You just shared some fun information that you just left a 16-year career as a chiropractor and left that all behind to start another coaching business and a performance business. And I'd love to tell us a little bit about that process and that journey and what has transpired here in the last couple of months or few months.
Absolutely. So it's actually interesting. I was thinking about it on my walk this morning. It was literally about a year ago that I was at a retreat and my world kind of got blown wide open. Like, what else is there for me? And I loved my practice. I had no intention of leaving it. What else? I had started a network marketing side gig because multiple streams of income is so important. So I started that last February, and I was at a retreat for these women, and it was like, what else is possible? What else is, and I just kept asking myself that question. And lo and behold, I had, like I said, I had no intention of selling my practice. I was really happy with where I was, what I had built, and how I had really come into kind of where I was at a really great sweet spot in my practice. And it just kind of hit me as I was doing more coaching myself, like having more mentors speak into my life. And also I started to realize I was actually coaching my patients without realizing it. The conversations that just kind of went from week to week to week, people always kind of ask me, how do you remember we had that conversation? I was like, well, because you're important to me. And so it just kind of evolved. And as I was asking myself the question, what else do I want? And it really started to look at, I wanted my life to look different. I loved going into the office, and it also kept me away from my family. So as my daughter started to say, Mommy, oh, you're going to the office today? Shoot. And it was like, oh, kind of a dagger in the heart going, okay, there's a shift that needs to happen. And I had already modified my hours. I was working very part-time. But even then, those hours away from my daughter and my husband were hours that I didn't want to be away anymore. So I started to look at, okay, what would this look like? I looked into coaching, and as I was already doing it, I started to bring on some coaching clients, and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take a leap. And I did. And I think that there was a lot wrapped up in my identity as a chiropractor. I've always been Dr. Patti. Well, not always, but for the last 16 years, it was Dr. Patti. And I was the chiropractor. And now the beautiful thing is I get to just be me. And I get to show up in all the ways that I always had as Dr. Patti, just without doing the adjusting pieces. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces for me in wanting to reshape and continuing to ask myself the question of what else do I want. I found myself in this answer, and it's amazing.
I love that. You know, it brings up a lot, because I think a lot of people out there are thinking about doing these things. And I love talking about life design, about how are we making decisions and what are we doing in our life to live the optimal life, right? Live the life we want ultimately. And sometimes that means we have to leave things behind. We have to change our identity. We have to leave our careers or leave our jobs or whatever. Even sometimes leave the most important relationships we have, but to ultimately create the life you want. And you mentioned this, that, I was Dr. Patti for 16 years, and what showed up for you in terms of fear or challenges or maybe anxiety or insecurity of making that leap? And you clearly landed on your feet, so that's good. You didn't land on your face, right? But right. As you were going through that, I mean, what was showing up for you, and what were some of the thoughts?
It was actually the last couple of months of the year where it was kind of like, oh no, what am I doing? Like
doubting yourself almost.
Like doubting myself, like, oh my gosh, did I just make a big mistake? Because my practice really was built of people who had been with me for 5-10 years. These were people that I've known for a long time. And as I was starting the process of saying goodbye and introducing a new doctor and kind of that transition period, I was kind of like, oh no, what did I do? This is who I am. I was so wrapped up in the identity of it that I kind of got lost in remembering. I forgot like what I was headed into, and like held so tightly like this, because I felt this is who, in a good portion of my adult years, I was like, that's who I was. And so I think a lot of doubt and fear crept in. And then I had to really start to remind myself, you know what? There's nothing wrong with making a change. Mm-hmm. This pivot is actually enriching not only me, but also it was actually an enrichment for my patients. As I started to see them interacting with the new doctor, because we had a good 6 weeks where both of us were in the office, I started to see like how she was taking on their care and going, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't think of that. No harm, no foul on me, but I'm like, I know I'm leaving them in such good hands. And there was just such a reassurance to be able to see, you know what, I am making the right decision. Yeah, there's fear. There's a lot of unknown that I'm stepping into. And yet I think that was the beauty of it, in knowing that I got to now navigate into something new, into designing, like you were talking about, designing my life in such a way that really allowed me more space and more grace and more opportunities.
Yeah, it's just amazing how the universe just plays itself out, doesn't it? Like, even when we want to blow everything up and like start all over, click the reset button, and we're like, how's this all going to get solved? How are these things going to work themselves out, or who's going to take care of my past or whatever? But it just always, nature keeps healing itself and nature keeps moving forward.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about this program you've created called AlignHER, or is it Heart or AlignHER Collective? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in my coaching process, I have created something called the Heart Method.
The Heart Method.
And it's what I walk the women that I coach through, because it's honestly what it's how I evolved. And then from that, as I was really looking at my career in chiropractic and then how in coaching, like I had such a solid network of women around me that I could be vulnerable with, that I could encourage, that I could share my wins with. And I realized I didn't have that in chiropractic.
Most people don't have that.
Well, true. Which is why and that's where this came from.
That's right.
So the AlignHER Collective is really a space for moms who are business owners, because I don't think there's enough room. There's nothing out there like this, where moms who are business owners have a space to be able to not only talk about their business, but also to be able to talk about marriage and parenting and how they're taking care of themselves and their desires and their dreams and their goals. And what does that look like? And to find a place where they can be authentically them and maybe say, you know what, I'm not happy in my business right now. Or I'm really struggling with like how I'm connecting with my kids. because I feel like, and this was me, I felt like I was so driven in my practice and I loved being there. But when I was in my practice, I was like, shoot, I'm not with my daughter. And then when I was with my daughter, I was like, wait, there's things I should be doing in my practice. So I was never fully present in either space. I shouldn't say never, because I learned to be.
Right.
But I always found myself, there was this push-pull that kind of kept happening over and over again. And so as I found a space where I could start to communicate and I could share my heart and I could connect with other women who were having the same struggles, I was like, wow, I'm not alone. And it was such a unique feeling to finally go, okay, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was, because I'm not the only one who's having these thoughts.
That's the first step, isn't it? Like, just amazing how, like, you didn't even talk about the solution, or you didn't even talk about like what it was, but just like the fact that you find yourself that maybe this self-talk, I'm by myself in this experience, and that then you find a community of people that are like, oh wow, I'm going through the same issues, which is exactly why I have this platform. Is I want to be able to have these conversations with people that, like, you're not alone in feeling this sort of angst or this stress or this anxiety of making big leaps in your life or making these choices. You're not stuck. You're not alone, right? And then how then can we overcome all that and land on our feet? So, okay, so you found a community, you were able to talk about it. Then what?
And then I wanted to bring more women in, because I know once I figured out, oh wait, this is not just happening with me. How many more women would desire this type of a community?
Right.
How many more women are like craving this type of connection? The ability to be able to say, you know what, things are hard right now in my business, and I can't show up that way with colleagues because it's not accepted. And again, that's what I found myself in my chiropractic practice. I was part of multiple practice management companies, and we would get together, like doctors, 1,000 doctors in a room, broke down into small groups, and everybody put on this front of like, yep, my practice is great, I'm doing amazing. When, come on, really, in a room of 1,000 people, not one person is struggling? And I knew that there were bits and pieces, and I was navigating through, like I moved from one office to another and trying to figure out like, how do I do this piece, or what other marketing things, or how else can I attract people in? But I didn't feel safe enough in that practice management group to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling. Right. So finding something that's outside of the business aspect, I think is so important. And just again, to know that these are women who are in similar circumstances. Their businesses don't have to be the same. They don't have to have the same number of kids. They don't have to live in the same town, but there's just a common theme across the board with moms who own businesses. There's particular stresses.
Do you find that when you attract those people, that the conversation is pretty natural? Do you feel like, meaning that all people are looking for is the space to talk about it, and then once they find the space, like it all just comes out? Or are you feeling like people are still reserved and potentially holding back? You know, because I think at least with men, I'll say, is not only do these circles not exist as much, but you know, we're not trained to be extra vulnerable or extra open with all the things, especially when you talk about all the aspects of our life. Maybe you talk about all the issues that are going on in your business, but you ain't going to talk about your relationship with your kids or your wife, you know? And so you have to work through that, and you have to start digging. And once you do it, I think there's like this beauty and this openness that, you know, when you create that space of healing, like you can accomplish a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And then you start getting everything that you want. It all starts showing up. Do you find that the same in circles of women?
I think with women, it's a little different. And I've had this conversation several times with my husband, especially surrounding our couples mastermind, because he's like, so with the ladies, when you guys like talk together, it's different. I'm like, yeah, because we're women. Like, it's just different. It's different. And so what I have found with women who, when they come together, there is kind of a sense of like, is this a safe place? But that shell cracks pretty easily. and honestly pretty quickly when they feel seen. And I think that's the biggest thing that I really want women to feel is like you're seen for just who you are and just how you're showing up. There's no judgment. And that's the biggest thing that I really help encourage the women around me and in the group and the one-on-one women I coach. There's zero judgment. You can come to me, you can come to the group as you are, because I guarantee you somebody else in the group has already experienced that. And they could potentially help walk you through it.
I think it's really fascinating how many things people are going through, and yet we often don't talk about it because of this fear of judgment. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about specifically coaching. I'm just talking about everyday life. Mm-hmm. You see people walking the streets, and you see people going at the grocery store, and I'll share the story. Is like, I was downtown Orange a couple of days ago, and there was some kid like graduation for some school, and you could see all these families walking around. And Orange County, Southern California is pretty affluent. Like people do okay, and they have big families, very suburban lifestyle here and all that. And you could see like everyone walking, and no one was talking. And like families would walk side by side, and it just sort of like a really weird. I never really observed that before, where they were just all walking, heads down or heads up, but no one was engaging, no one was talking, and they just all graduated, right? Like it should be some very interesting exchange of energy and love and connection, but like people are going through so much stuff, and just within their own family, and it's really something that I observed, that like, how can we have these conversations and break these things down? And it's not easy. Please don't get it wrong. Like, this is not easy to be talking about. What are your biggest fears? What are your biggest challenges? How do I feel judged within my own family? How do I feel judged at work or with my coworkers or whatever? All these things are like real. I don't know why I just went on that tangent, but
no, it's perfect. It actually reminded me of at the event I was at about a year ago. The icebreaker, and this was all women, the icebreaker was to go around the table and share with the woman you were, like, you had to share with everybody around the table what your like instantaneous thought of them was when you first met them.
Oh yeah. Like, what was your judgment? I love that.
Exactly. And I was just like, oh, we're really doing this?
I love that.
We tend to, and I think that for me was a huge eye opener of like, how I thought people saw me and how they actually did. I was like, it was mind blowing, honestly.
The difference
in how I assumed people were seeing me. And because it's basically this filter of like, I'm making my own snap judgments of whether other people are thinking about me.
So explain more. So what was observed? So
what women found, it helped draw us together so quickly, because we honestly let our guard down and was like, okay, I have to be honest. And like, I remember one woman, like, she just came across as very, very confident and secure in who she was. And she was a realtor, and she had all of her, like, just looked like she had all of her stuff together. And so I shared that with her, and she was like, wow, I just had like the roughest week of my life. And I was like, I never would have known that. But because we all put on, and I don't want it to be like we put on these masks, but the way that we carry ourselves, I think sometimes can be really different from how we perceive ourselves on the inside. Mm-hmm. Like we show up in such a way, like, of course we don't want someone to like see the rough week that we just had. So she just showed up as her in the midst of having a challenging week. And it was really interesting. And some of the feedback that I got, I was just like, wow, I didn't realize that, because I am actually very introverted. And so when I'm in a big group for the first time, I'm really quiet. And a lot of the feedback that I got, they were like, wow, you seem like you were very confident. And I was just like, thank you. How is that possible that I portray that? But thank you. So it was a very humbling experience to be able to show up in that way.
I love that. How do you manage stress and anxiety and when you have an off day?
That's a great question. Honestly, for me, a lot of it, at times I go up into my head and I try to like calculate and control and like figure out the pieces. And what I have learned very quickly is that doesn't work so well. I can't think a lot of things, especially when things don't go my way, or I've had a hard day, or if there's a lot of stress. The more I try to control, the worse it gets. So what I have learned is the more I can surrender and the more I can just let go to, you know what, that's how I anticipated something was going to go, yet it didn't. So I could either stress out about it and try to fix it, or I can say, okay, what else can come of this? If I thought it was going to go a certain way, what better thing can come? Or maybe that's not for me, and that's okay.
Who's had the biggest impact on your life?
Wow. That's a really hard question to answer.
I threw that right at you, by the way.
You did.
Listener, she's not prepared for that question, so give her a second.
Right out of left field. I love it. Wow. It's going to take me a second to think of who has had the biggest impact. You know what? My daughter has had an incredible impact on my life. Because I remember growing up, I wanted to be a young mom. I wanted to have kids right out of college, so on and so forth. Again, things out of my control. I became a mom after I was 30, in my late 30s. And she has taught me, first and foremost, everything can be cleaned, but also that she looks at life through such curiosity, and I love that. So she has been my greatest teacher in really the last 7 years in saying, how can I be more curious about this and looking at things in just a different light?
I love that. Kids really do change everything. I mean, I have changed a lot since I had kids, and I think that's a little cliche. People think like, oh, of course your priorities change and you know, the kids are most important thing in your life, like all those cliches, but really like they give you such a level of perspective of like going back to things that are simple, making things simple, making things easy, right? Like having fun. I just recorded another podcast about like the play and the joy of leveling with the kids and like playing with them in the grass. Like those types of things change when you have your own kids. Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about relationships.
Yeah.
So you and my good friend Alfonso, you know, you guys are spending time on your relationship. You have a beautiful relationship together. Tell me about what you've learned in how to maintain and have a relationship that thrives.
Slowing down and being intentional. When I was in practice, I was really, really busy. As he was working in design, like we were kind of go. And there were a lot of times where we would just kind of be like passing ships, and we didn't have regular date nights and regular connection times and deeper conversations. And one of the things that I've loved in the last several years is we are able to dig deeper into what is it that really lights you up? Where do you see yourself years from now? Where do you see us years from now? What dreams do you have? And we're in a really beautiful time for both of us because we're both developing and creating something brand new. And there's a lot of dreaming happening, which is really fun. And then also seeing some of those things come to fruition already has been just mind-blowing for the two of us. And to be each other's cheerleaders, but also to be each other's confidants and being like, hey, this is really hard and really scary right now. I think it's just the intentional communication that we're having is important.
I love that. And you guys are taking some big leaps and taking some risks and dreaming big, and a lot of things are manifesting too, right?
They sure are. They sure are in big ways.
That's so awesome. What do you wish you knew 20 years ago?
Ooh. I wish I would have known 20 years ago not to take things so seriously.
Yeah, me too.
It's not the end of the world if something doesn't go your way. And again, my daughter taught me everything can be clean, things can change. It's okay.
Well,
keep going.
That's awesome. And one last question as we kind of wrap up here is, in your eyes, what does it mean to live a rich life?
It's to be present. If you would have asked me that question when I was a kiddo, a rich life would have been about monetary or things. And as I have learned, it's really being with whoever's in front of you. The richness of literally like watching my daughter discover something new or having a conversation with her about something that happened in school and just really trying to understand her point of view and what happened. And then just living the life that we're living right now, slowing down, is really enriched and created a very rich life for us.
I love that. And actually, I didn't even think about this while we were talking, but you are a somatic breath coach. And so how, like, as you were talking about that being present, how have you learned, or how do you help others learn how to be present through breathing?
Yeah, the somatic breathwork practice is actually still my connection to how the body works, because with the breathwork, you're actually able to address the nerve system, to be able to calm the nerve system, to be able to release stuck emotions, old traumas, whatever it might be. So it's all, honestly, for me as a retired chiropractor, I still get to adjust someone, so to speak. Well, they do the adjusting through their breath work, but it's the ability to be able to still serve someone on such a deep level, because with the breath work, you're able to break through challenges or blocks that have held you back for years and you didn't realize were there. So it's honestly, I've talked a lot to people about this. Instead of doing 10 years of counseling, do 1 hour of breath work and you'll have the same result. It's truly mind-blowing to see the change and transformation that happens when you can truly tap in, because what breath work does is it actually allows you to tap into your subconscious to release old stuck patterns, old stuck emotions. And it's a practice that I still do regularly with myself. And it's something you don't have to do it for the entire hour. You can actually do
It's intense.
It is.
It's intense.
Have you done it?
I've done it maybe at least once, maybe twice, but yeah, it is intense. It's not a joke. I mean, I do a lot of breath work just to like do the ice dipping or control stress or whatever, but somatic breath work is like a whole nother level.
It sure is.
Yeah. Well, so good to have you. Dr. Patti, if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Best way to find me is on Instagram. It's
Okay.
drpattigonzalez.ig. There's links in my bio for breathwork, for one-on-one coaching, for the AlignHER. I have a retreat coming up in June, and just really excited to be able to connect with people there.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for sharing, and congratulations on all the big leaps, and say hi to Alfonso for me. And again, thank you for showing up the way you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.